Today we're going to be talking about airflow. So the first thing that we need to do when we're looking at airflows is turn the unit on. We typically measure airflows in max cooling. So we're going to turn the thermostat down as far as it's going to go and make sure that the fan speed is all the way up. So now we're set at cooling as far down as the thermostat will go. It's 56 in here, we're calling it 50. One of the things we're going to want to look at before we test the airflows is the filter. We want to make sure that the air filter is not full of dust, because if it is, it's going to hurt the amount of airflow that comes out of the supply vents. So this filter's pretty new, pretty good. You can sort of see the light through it. If it were really bad, we would then take it out before testing. So one of the first things I look at when I'm measuring airflow is the ductwork in the unit in the attic. So I want to make sure that everything looks like there's going to be a good amount of airflow going through the system. There's no restrictions. I look at how many return ductwork, how many return ducts are going off the system for a later test that I'm going to do, like duct leakage and things like that. I also look at these seams here on the return and the supply side, as well as unit penetrations like this. You want to make sure that all those things are sealed, because all of that affects airflow, static pressure, unit efficiency in general. So, so that's the first thing I do, is I look around the system, I see what's going on. This one in particular has a fresh air controller here, and it actually has two zones down there. There's a damper that separates one side of the supply plan that goes downstairs from the other side, which goes upstairs. So it's important to know all of those things and sort of see the bigger picture before you start measuring the airflow. So now that we've looked at the existing ductwork and where the air comes from, we're now going to go downstairs and look at where the air comes out. We're going to measure it and look at different ways of measuring airflow. So all controls are different. There are different ways to achieve max airflow. Sometimes you just have to turn on the fan to high speed. Other times it's important to have it in max cooling in order to get the amount of airflow out of the ducts that you want. Typically, the HVAC contractor leaves me a copy of their test and balance report. This report shows the designed airflows and the numbers that they actually got, and it shows them testing and balancing the equipment in accordance with the Manual J design airflows. So now all I have to do is check their work and make sure that the right amount of airflow is coming out of each duct. This is a bolometer. It's my preferred choice in measuring airflow. It is not the most accurate thing, but it is the most usable, the most versatile, and provides numbers that are well within any margin of error. So this is sort of the gold standard when it comes to airflow testing in code testing like this with new construction. So inside there are vanes that are measuring the pressure of the air going through one side and out the other. And that's a known opening, so then it can calculate the volume of air that's going through based on the pressure. So it has a digital readout right here, and so when we put it up to a vent, like so, we can then turn it on and measure the amount of pressure that comes through, which converts into a CFM. Currently there's 47 CFM, cubic feet of air per minute, coming through this duct. So now that we've taken a look and we've seen the amount of CFM coming out of the register, I look at their test and balance sheet to make sure that that number 47 CFM is within 20% of the Manual J, and it's close to what the HVAC contractor got, which is correct. I then go around the rest of the house and I measure all of the airflows. I add up everything and make sure that the airflow for the whole house is within 10% of the Manual J. Codes may vary in your neck of the woods, but here in Austin, you need to be within 20% of individual airflows and 10% overall. Going around and measuring all the registers, I'm then going to check for noisy registers, airflows, vents that might be getting too much airflow, and I'm also going to check for air registers that are cut off, that are not getting enough airflow. So there are several different ways to measure airflow, probably like 7 or 8 or so. Here are a few laid out on the table, aside from the bolometer, which I showed you earlier. We've got here a pitot tube that's going to be measuring static pressure as well as velocity pressure. That's why there are two tubes here. Then there's this anemometer here, which you're allowed to paint the aperture and then take basically an average reading of the airflow through this fan. Like I said, there are many other ways to measure airflow. It just depends on what your project needs are and what you're doing. I much prefer the bolometer as opposed to the anemometer or the pitot tube because it allows me to accurately and quickly measure airflow. There are times where you can't use the manometer. Let's say that you're measuring a fresh air intake and it's on the side of the building and you don't want to climb up to the top. You can then stick this pitot tube in and measure airflow that way. So it just depends on your needs and what you want to accomplish as far as which equipment you'll use.